Thank you so much, Andy, for that solo. So this is amazing. I think I see an empty chair in the back. If everybody squinches a little bit tight, you might be able to make room. Just don't tell the fire marshal today of what we've got going. All right, thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Barry. First of all, our thoughts are with Allison this morning, and Andy and Deanna Diaz have stepped in to perform some solos in her stead. Thank you for the quick pivot, both of you. And thank you for fighting through the snowstorm, everybody, to get here. My name's Bruce Grierson, and I'm thrilled to be your service leader this morning on this fine day on planet Earth. Now, if we had to have a winter storm, why not on Groundhog Day, I say? And we'll be talking a little bit more about that. And I vowed not to use the T word today. And then I realized there are two T words, the 25% thing that goes into effect on Tuesday, and the guy who put it in place. So maybe what we can do to sort of inoculate ourselves is use another T word, time, as in, this too shall pass. And today, the idea of time is really what's on the docket as we delve into Groundhog Day, one of the lesser holidays, admittedly, but I hope you'll agree after we've rooted around in it a bit today, it's plenty rich. Groundhog Day actually traces back to the early Christian ritual of Candlemas, and then back even farther to pre-Christian times and the Celtic practice of Imbolc, when this time of year you kept an eye out for the coming of the goddess Brigid, harbinger of spring. And people made little Brigid dolls back then. So you can have a bit of fun with the way some of these myths and rituals blend together. Does anybody, I'm guessing yes, does anybody remember the Smothers Brothers? Okay, so one time they appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show. It was around Easter. And Tommy Smothers, he was the more outspoken brother, shall we say, he took it upon himself to give a little theology lesson. He said, Easter is the time when Christ comes out of his tomb, and if he sees his shadow, there'll be 6 more weeks of winter. So this was a scandalous thing to say back in the day, 1970. These days, I think most Christians would probably laugh and say, hey, well, at least you're talking about Jesus. That is a win. It's good to laugh, but there are also heavy emotions we're holding today. So to begin, let's sing our gathering song, just as long as I have breath. right. Welcome again, everyone, to our cabin in the woods, our community of seekers and searchers, of spiritual argonauts and hard-headed rationalists and everything in between. A community held together by strong coffee and strong opinions lightly held, and mutual respect and love. Whoever you are, whatever you do, whoever you care for most deeply, we hope you feel warmly embraced here. Anyone visiting us for the first time? Anyway, we're glad you found us, especially in the circumstances. Okay, right. We are the North Shore Unitarians, and we gather here each Sunday on the ancestral territory of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam First People. And we strive to keep top of mind what it means to be part of that history on this land and what our obligations are going forward. Now, we begin every service here by lighting the chalice, and this morning, I am pleased to welcome Jennifer to do the honors. I think this may be your first time ever up here. Thank you so much. We kindle this flame as a symbol of our gathering. May the light of understanding illuminate our darkness. May the warmth of sharing bring us peace. Our second candle is the candle of joys and sorrows. Allison, we grieve with you the peaceful passing of your father this week. And even though we all didn't know Archie, I think we can surmise some things from the character of his daughter. To help balance the scale, does anyone have any happy news to share from this week? Any birthdays, grandkids doing fun things? Well, I'm going to say it's happy news that everybody made it safely here under the conditions. Here's something I'm going to share. I don't think a lot of people know this, but Leslie White has been coming in almost every day and working to rehabilitate our library. She's cataloging it, she's making sure that every book has a card, and she's quietly doing this work without any fanfare. So I'm going to acknowledge you right now. Leslie, thank you so much for that. Our candle of global concerns. I have a few thoughts here, but I'd like to save them for the end of the service. For now, I'm going to suggest, after Jen lights this candle, I'm going to suggest that we take 2 minutes to be silent with our thoughts and feelings in a very complicated time. I'll bring you out of it with the gong.
Things that we're perfected to do around. So let's do the 3 verses and then choose the part you like the best. And let's do this a beautiful run.
So how it works is everybody sings part 1, everybody sings part 2, everybody sings part 3. So that's the first time through. Then we're going to go back and we're all going to sing those parts together. So you just choose whatever part you want to sing.
Walk humbly on this earth.
righty. The little story by Megan Mitchell is not going to happen because Megan got snowed in. So we're going to move right on. By the way, I'm hoping you get to hear Megan in an upcoming service because this is an awesome little story. Okay, here we go. So who likes riddles? It's always a risky way to open with that. It's kind of like imagine walking into a party and, hey, everyone who likes riddles. That'll clear a room pretty quickly. But some people do like riddles, and I like riddles, and so I'm gonna share a riddle with you now, and it goes like this: a man leaves on foot one evening. He leaves home on foot one evening. And he makes 3 left turns, and when he arrives back home, 2 masked men are waiting for him. Who are they? Okay, I'll tell you this again, because that's a lot of information. A man leaves home one evening on foot. He makes 3 left turns, only to arrive back home to find 2 masked men waiting for him. Who are the 2 masked men? Okay, so I'm going to ask you put that in the back of your mind and let your subconscious work on it while we get into the meat of the reflection here. All right. Groundhog Day, the movie. Who has seen it here? All right, classic. Okay, so for those who haven't, and just for a refresher, Bill Murray plays TV weatherman Phil Connors, who finds himself, like every year on February 2nd, sent out into the field to Puxatawney, Pennsylvania, to report on urgent breaking news. Will the local groundhog see his shadow? America has decided this particular groundhog is the barometer of spring. And the groundhog is also called Phil, by the way, Puxatawney Phil. And here's a question. We have our own, in Canada, our own version of Puxatawney Phil. Who is our national groundhog that everybody keeps an eye on? Anyone know? You know, Marcia.
There are 3, but
What?
one of them is Wyerton Willie.
Wyerton Willie was the answer I was looking for. What are the other 2?
There is another marmot-like creature called, it's something that ends with Acadie in Nova Scotia.
Okay,
And
wow.
that one too.
So Marcia has said there's a marmot-like creature in Nova Scotia that's an unofficial... Juganaki, Nova Scotia. Okay, so who knew there was more than one? Anyway, extra points for knowing Wyerton Willie. Wyerton is in Ontario, by the way. Okay. Anyway, we can see that Weatherman Phil here in the picture is not bursting with enthusiasm over this assignment. Every year, he hates it a little bit more, because he is an artiste. This is beneath his talents. He's like Lear out on the heath, shaking his fist at the heavens. And he says, 1,000 people freezing their butts off, waiting to worship a rat. What a crock. So the only thing Phil seems remotely interested in is his producer, played by Andy McDowell. And he's not exactly winning her over with his charms. Anyway, Phil finally holds his nose and they film the spot, and the whole crew packs up and prepares to hightail it out of Dodge. But they can't, because now a storm has blown in, kind of like the one outside right now, and they have to stay the night. So we see Phil heading for bed in his hotel room and waking up at the crack of 6 and dragging himself out into the day. And it quickly becomes clear that something's weird. The same things keep happening that happened yesterday in the same order. You know, same banter with the stranger in the pancake line, same misstep in a frosty puddle, same run-in with an old classmate who tries to sell him life insurance. And people are talking about, will the groundhog see his shadow? It dawns on Phil, though he at first shakes off the notion because it just seems too bizarre, that today is a do-over of yesterday somehow. It's like a video game where the only non-player character is him. So he reports his story again, turns in for the night in the hotel again, only to wake up. Same thing. Same song on the clock radio. And now you have to imagine here the song is Sonny and Cher singing, I got you, babe. I got you, babe. Same time, same song, same day, again and again and again. Phil is in a time warp. He's in a prison called Groundhog Day. And as the cycle repeats and repeats, Phil starts to lose it. And as the repeating days become repeating weeks, things get very dark. I'll tell you, he says, Phil's doing a stand-up. I'll give you a winter prediction. It's going to be cold, it's going to be gray, and it's going to last for the rest of your life. So there's no way out. There's no way out. There's not even the big way out. So he's got to figure out some way to break the pattern. And it becomes clear to us, the audience, though not yet to Phil, that this is kind of a cosmic test. Not quite yet, Barry, one back. This is kind of a cosmic test of character, and he needs to pass it to be sprung free. So this is a Bill Murray movie, just a goofball romp, right? Well, Roger Ebert, the great film critic, he thought so at first pass. He liked it, but he didn't love it. Years later, he circled back with his tail between his legs. He said, Groundhog Day was the only film, possibly one of the very few, that he ever re-reviewed. He admitted he'd been so busy being entertained, he lost sight of its depths. And this time he upped his grade from charming to darn near perfect. Philosophers watched the movie and they said, hey, we recognize this. This is Nietzsche's idea of eternal recurrence. 150 years ago, while hiking in the Swiss Alps, Nietzsche, the German philosopher, hatched this thought experiment. What if you received a letter one day in the mail, and the letter said, here's the secret of the universe. Everything that happens to you today will happen again and again. Your whole life will play out exactly over and over again. So what is your reaction to this letter, knowing that that's what's in store for you? Do you respond with joy, like, hey, great news, I'm not going to die? Or horror, because a life without end would have no meaning? What kind of meaning and fulfillment could you squeeze out of such a life, knowing that you were basically trapped in the present moment? So that's a philosopher's question, but it's also a spiritual question. Basically, what's the point of existing? What is the end game here? Is there one? So, spoiler alert, in the movie, Weatherman Phil finally cracks the code. But before he does, he passes through all of Kubler-Ross's stages, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and finally a kind of acceptance. And at this last stage, now he's on the threshold. He's right there. He's almost there, but he's not quite there. He still needs to demonstrate something he didn't know was in him, an emotion he'd been a stranger to for his entire life, compassion, and even love, unconditional, untransactional love. Groundhog Day is the most spiritual movie of all time. That was the verdict of religious leaders of various faiths who were surveyed by the British newspaper, The Independent, a few years ago. Buddhists, Christians, and Jews have all said they resonate deeply with it. And by the way, Harold Ramis, the director, he was a little bit, and he wrote the film too, he's a little bit worried he was going to offend pretty much everyone with this film. And when it opened, people showed up with placards out in front of the cinema in more than one city, and Harold was like, uh-oh. But they weren't protesting. They were kind of slipstreaming behind the message. One sign said, are you living the same day over and over again? It's like, basically, Harold, you nailed it. This is the essential question we should all be asking ourselves. And if the answer is yes, what are you going to do about it? Who are you going to call? Oh, wait a sec, that's Ghostbusters. Also Harold Ramis. Maybe that is the most spiritual movie of all time. Anyway, Harold Ramis was a closet Buddhist. Not formally, but temperamentally for sure. The Buddhists speak of samsara, the continual cycle of rebirth. They say on each go-round, we have lessons to learn. And if you don't learn the lesson, you don't move on. It's back to the classroom. And, pro tip, the answer is turning self-centeredness outward into loving kindness. And that's what happens to Weatherman Phil in the film. He experiences spiritual growth almost in spite of himself. And you can see it. You can see his soul kind of ripen over the course of his ordeal. You can see it mature from I to we. From, hey, this thing's a superpower I can use to my advantage. Like I now know the winning lottery numbers, right? To self-improvement. Hey, you have eternity to learn every language, learn to play every instrument. This is all good. But Phil slowly starts to turn the beam outward eventually. He saves the kid he now knows is going to fall out of that tree, right? The evolution of a soul is from what can I get to how can I help? And that's a nice way to think about samsara, the Buddhist concept of purposeful rebirth. And I gotta say, it's a powerful message for everyone, even those of us who aren't totally sold on the literal idea of reincarnation. It's a solid metaphor. A lot of Unitarians would say, I think that a person can be reborn in this life, just by having transformative experiences that leave you a little change. I'll never forget how Karen Armstrong talks about this. Has anybody heard of her, the religious scholar? Yeah. I gotta confess, she speaks to me big time. And she's without doubt one of the world's top experts in comparative religion. And what she has come to believe, and this is very Groundhog Day, is that we do grow, we all grow, spiritually or developmentally, however you want to say it. But the path of our growth is not linear. It's more like the trip up a spiral staircase. We're constantly, as she says, circling back on ourselves. And we go, hey, I've been here before. Except not quite. We're where we were, but we're one floor up. We're a little more elevated than we were because we now have more experience. We have a little more wisdom, maybe. A Buddhist would say we're a smidgen closer to enlightenment. That alarm clock that jars Bill Murray awake every morning, you can't miss the message there. This is your wake-up call, buddy. You could press the snooze button and go back to sleep. Most people do. But the universe is inviting you not to. I gotta confess, this kind of thing lights me up because my first book, called U-Turn, was all about these kinds of experiences. And the book was actually going to be called Wake Up Calls. That was the advanced reader's copy name. We changed it at the last minute. But that's what it's about. It's basically stories of people who had these kinds of life-changing experiences we're talking about, the kind that made them feel like they just got a do-over. One academic had a name for people who'd been through that experience. He calls them the twice-born. The twice-born. And what I found was that these kind of people tended, after that experience, not only to throw their old life over the side, but to strike out on this new path with incredible zest and purpose. It's like carpe diem, man. The movie leans into that idea a little bit, and that's why people find it so inspirational. For all we know, today is all we get. Let's assume it is. So then for all the stuff on my calendar today, you look at it and you go, what can I do that is worthy of eternity? But I believe there's a second way to look at this movie and what it's trying to say. I'm just going to take 5 seconds here, and we'll go to the second part of this. Alrighty. Okay, so the first way of looking at the movie Groundhog Day is what we've been talking about, is that life is about progress. We've been snoozing, and we need a wake-up call in order to make more of ourselves. Put some progress in the books. Progress of your character, your wisdom, your soul. The bottom line is, things are going to get better. But, of course, there's no guarantee of that. Nietzsche's own insight, which he fleshed out after returning from that hike in the Alps, was this. If you really did receive that letter in the mail, and you learned that you were going to be repeating kindergarten for the rest of your life, there could be a couple of reactions. Yes, you could think of all the cool things you could do with infinite time to play with, but you could also, and maybe this would end up being job one, you could prepare for the worst. You might think, I need to sharpen up my defense here, because the bad stuff is going to keep coming around again and again too, and I better learn to handle it. The Buddhists would say that we need to develop the skills to be happy even when we're pointed right into the teeth of the wind. Even when we're suffering, we need to cultivate that turn of mind to be able to sit with uncertainty and anxiety and kind of be okay with it. And I think this is at the core of the whole mindfulness movement. Thich Nhat Hanh had some wise things to say about this. He said, it's not productive to say, I'll be happy when, or life will be great when. There is no when. When doesn't exist. All you have is now. So it's how you work with now that determines the quality of your life. You know, it's funny. On one level, Groundhog Day seems like a wild sci-fi conceit. But on another level, it's almost realism. You know, this bizarre situation Bill Murray finds himself in, it's a distortion of our lives, but it's recognizable. There's a scene in the movie where Bill Murray's character is sitting in a bar. He's feeling very alone. A couple of barflies sitting next to him. He turns to one of them and says, what would you do if every day was the same and you were stuck in one place and nothing you did mattered? And the guy replies, well, that about sums it up for me. And that's all of us to some degree. I mean, there's a lot of repetition in our days. We make the same mistakes over and over a lot of times, some of us more than others. Someone figured out, and I'm not sure how, but it does seem to be credible neuroscience, that we have around 60,000 thoughts a day. That sounds pretty good, except that 95% of them are the same thoughts we had yesterday. Boy. I think that's why repetition is soothing to us. The most satisfying songs have a fugue structure. They keep circling back home. They drift off key and end up back in the key they began on. The most satisfying stories return to the beginning and tie up the loose ends. It's almost as if we need to be reminded of the cyclical nature of our lives, of time, at a subconscious level. So the question becomes, if you really were living in a Groundhog Day world, would you want to know it? I did a story years ago about elder care, and I built it around the facility my mom was living in at the time in Edmonton. She was in the Alzheimer's wing. She was a real long-timer. She had Alzheimer's for almost 20 years. The thing with dementia is, and many of you will have experienced this with loved ones, it's a lot like Groundhog Day. Every day is a clean slate. The difference is, it's not the folks with dementia who experience it as Groundhog Day, it's their loved ones. You pay a visit to a place like that, you are in the Bill Murray role. You can see the recurring patterns, the same conversational loops, the same anecdotes over and over, but you're the only one who can, because you're the only one who can remember what happened yesterday, you and the staff. The residents themselves, their lack of short-term memory wipes out any trauma that knowledge would create. So it's a wild time in there, but they kind of don't register it as a wild time, because a wild time is a story. And they don't have enough continuous track being laid down to make a story. I remember one time my sister paid a visit to my mom, and my mom's face was pink. Turned out that at breakfast, my mom had got right up in the grill of her table mate, and he'd swatted her across the face with a newspaper. And my sister thought, oh my gosh, that's awful. What's going to happen now? But the staff didn't seem too concerned. And sure enough, they go over to the lunch area, and there at the table is David, the swatter, and my mom sits across from him, and things seem fine between them. Clearly, neither of them had any recollection of it. A beginner's mind is a beautiful thing. You're the one trapped in the nightmare. And by the way, and when I say you, I gotta say, I mostly mean my sisters. They made the lion's share of the visits to my mom. They were cast in that movie for 20 years. I swanned in occasionally from the coast, but they shouldered the daily burden. And I just have to say that. My eldest sister, Carol, particularly, I am so grateful. That kind of caregiving is such a heavy lift, as many of you know. Anyway, that facility my mom was in was about to undergo a major reno, and it was being redesigned based on the model of a very cool place in the Netherlands called the Hogevik. Now, the Hogevik Has anyone heard of it? Sue maybe. Dogma is a facility designed to make the residents feel safe at all times. Safe, but also unfettered. And this is everyone has Alzheimer's, a form of dementia who's in Dogma. But it wants them to have the impression that they're roaming free in their little neighborhood. And really ingenious is the landscaping. This was one of the main things that my mom's facility was trying to copy. The paths are designed to curve you back onto yourself. So you think you're walking a straight line, going out and having a grand adventure, but you're actually winding slowly back to your starting point. And before you know it, really, before you've had time to register any disorientation, you have your bearings again. You're home. I mean, forget Disneyland. This is the happiest place on earth if you have dementia. For a while, I think there was even a bus stop out front. This was kind of controversial, but also kind of ingenious. It was a bus stop. And in the event that a kind of deeper homing instinct kicked in to some of the residents, at some level they sensed that this wasn't actually their home. There was another place they came from and would like to return to. They could go to the bus stop, sit on the bench, and wait for the bus to come that would take them home. But it was a pretend bus stop. There was no bus going to ever come to that stop. And what would happen is residents would sit on the bench and wait for the bus and think warm thoughts of home. And 5 or 10 or 15 minutes later, they would forget what they were doing there. And a staff member would come out and very kindly, deftly, gently lead them back inside to Dogma, which by now was home to them again. I don't know if my mom's facility ever went full Dogma with its reno plan. In any case, my mom didn't live to see it. Maybe she passed her test and got promoted. Or maybe there is no test. Who can say? By the way, I love the idea that there can be spiritual wisdom in the design of the built world. I think there almost has to be. The framers of tomorrow are going to have more to contend with than we can even imagine. It's complicated, and everything is connected to everything, and the last thing is connected to the soul. We can't just turn this all over to AI, because AI is going to be smart, but it's not going to be wise. A man leaves home on foot one evening. He makes 3 left turns. And when he returns back home, 2 masked men are waiting for him. Who are they? Did anyone solve this? Don't feel bad if you didn't. It's not a matter of intelligence. In fact, too much thinking can almost work against you in these kind of puzzles. The way to crack them is you kind of have to have a beginner's mind. You need to pass from stage 1, kind of unthinking, through stage 2, overthinking, to stage 3, which is really stage 1 all over again. These are your 2 masked men waiting at home for the runner who made 3 left turns and is now kind of trying to come home. While you listened to me jammer on for 25 minutes or so, your brain went out in search of a solution, and it ended up back where it started. It returned to where it came from, and, as Rumi said, knew that place for the first time. That's the way it works. That's the way it works. That's just the way it works. Happy Groundhog Day, everyone.
off my brokenness, utterly worthy of love. Maybe I've done enough. I finally see myself through the eyes of no one else. It's so exhausting on this silver screen, where I play the role of anyone but me. And I finally see myself on a bridge unoverwhelmed, a mess of a story I'm ashamed to tell, but I'm slowly learning how to break this spell. And I finally see myself. Now I only want what's real, to let my heart feel what it feels. God said where orbs hold no value here, where work and rest are equally revealed. I only want what's real. I set aside the highlight reel. I leave my greatest failures on display, with an asterisk worthy of love anyway.
Our outreach for the month of February is support for the North Shore Crisis Services Society, which provides transitional housing and second stage housing programs and support services for women and families leaving violence on the North Shore. Violence against women and children is a societal issue, and equality for women is at the heart of a healthy society. There's more information about this really great charity in your e-bulletin, and you can scan the logo here with your phone, which is another way of giving an offering, by the way. Would the ushers please come forward? Thank you. Thank you. Your generosity keeps the lights on in here, keeps the lights on in here. Thank you so much for your ongoing support. All right, a few announcements. There will be no casseroles today downstairs, but please enjoy the coffee that Barry has kindly set up. Marcia, I'm going to invite you up to tell us about this Adopt a Plant program we've got going on here. Oh, and you brought a prop. Fantastic. I think so. Let's see if it... Oh, yeah. Feels like it's working.
Are we on here? Good. Looking for signs of spring on a snowy midwinter day, for hope when the light seems dim. Today I invite you to join me in restoring a section of our grounds we're naming the Resiliency Garden. This little kinnikinick, with an even longer Latin name, is an example of a native species that thrives in tough conditions. And we're looking for sponsors of a couple dozen plants similar to this in various numbers. Last year, a 30-year-old cedar hedge was removed from the west side of the building, right along that, on the outside of that wall, after it was flagged as a wildfire risk in the Fire Smart assessment of our property. What was once a heavily shaded zone, as seen in the contorted trunks of the magnolia and the rhododendron that are left out there as they twist it up to try to get some sun, is now a dirt patch open to the sky with rocks and stumps. Thanks to Brian McConnell, who is here this morning, thanks to Brian McConnell and his hardworking team of volunteer gardeners for all their efforts all over the grounds, most recently grubbing out blackberry and English ivy, just ready to invade that area. To ward off this invasion and re-green that area, our environmental action team commissioned a landscaping design to guide us in replanting that northwest corner. We asked for native species that are drought tolerant, winter hardy, fire resistant, and attractive to birds and pollinators. And by the way, this little kinnikinick ticks all those boxes. Many of the other plants that have been chosen have similar properties. If you can take a hands-on approach, you have strong backs, you can get in touch with Brian, who's sitting here today. But we also need your help financially, as this $3,000 project falls outside of the annual budget. In addition to plants, we need to extend some plumbing and do some work in bringing in soil amendments. This is a pop-up campaign, like the ones a few years back that funded the chairs you're sitting in and the projection system that has enhanced our services for several years. If you make a $30 donation to the garden to adopt your plant, your name will go up underneath one of those plants, or the name of someone you'd like to dedicate the plant to, and you can also get a little pin, a little image on your name tag. Today I'll be at the back of the sanctuary to help you with that, but at any time you may donate online with the code word GARDEN in all of the ways that our team has set up to make that possible. So thanks very much for your time this morning, and I'll see you at the back.
Adopt a plant. Thank you, Marcia. Tremendous initiative. Thank you for spearheading it. Movie night. Movie nights are back. You remember them. And exquisitely curated by Brian McConnell and Andrea Fast, just like in the old days. First up, I have a planned series of 3, is Big Fish, mind-blowing film by Tim Burton. This is a Fun Fest event. You can buy a ticket after today's service, I do believe. Maybe.
The tickets didn't make it here today.
Okay. You can see Brian. You can see Brian and arrange a ticket. There are still tickets available, I do believe. Next week's service, the strands of the universe are woven through the tapestries of our lives and our communities. Next week, Leslie White will take you deep into that metaphor with the elan of a poet, which she is. In the meantime, you can think about the question she poses: how would you present the tapestry of your own life? And I think that might be it for our announcements. So with that, we're going to move into our closing hymn, number 114, Answering the Call of Love. It's almost impossible not to think of the developments in the U.S. and the rightward lurch in the world just generally as a kind of Groundhog Day scenario. Like we thought we were past all this, and here it is rearing up again. Authoritarianism is back. Mercury's in retrograde, and we're reliving the nightmare all over again. That's one way to look at it. The other is that we now have an opportunity. There are things about this second go-around that are different, or can be. Being hoodwinked once sort of steals your resolve to resist, to band together, to exert pressure, to get the powers of justice and equity and compassion aligned and working. These things are bigger than one human, and small wins are contagious, and hope is a waking dream. Let's extinguish our flame. We send forth this flame that carry us, light of vision, and warmth of hope. The world calls us to live with depth, meaning, and purpose.
We go forth with courage and love.
Thank you. It was a very special service today, it felt like. And I hope that some of the cool energy in this room conveys into the ether for people picking it up later. I really want to thank everybody who made this service possible, and largely by finding a way to get here and stepping in to perform roles you weren't originally assigned, and doing roles that you've never done before. And just generally, we were in a cocoon here for an hour and not even thinking about how we're going to get home, which we now have to think about. So thank you again, and let's circle around.
Circle round.
right.